Redditors who have worked in a theme park, what's the biggest adult tantrum you've witnessed? When I was in high school I was a face painter at a weekend festival involving a blue colored train who has adventures. Obviously we were just doing little trains on the kids' cheeks. However, one child threw a huge fit that he wanted his face to look just like Thomas the Tank Engine, which frankly looks really freaking creepy. However, his dad insisted and paid extra. Cue to 5 minutes after I spent 15 minutes carefully painting this kid's face to have his psychotic mom go ballistic on me that I've ruined her family's day and now her child looks like a demon. I was 16 and just sort of stared at her in shock and horror while the guy running the tent came over and escorted her out. Edit. BTW, the kid loved it. Was working one of the kiddie rides one day and this stupid kid in line stuck his head between the bars in the gate. It took me and 2 other adults to pull the bars enough for the kid to get his head back out. Afterwards the kid's mom comes running over and starts yelling at me for letting him get his head stuck. I told her that she should have been with the kid in line. She did not like that response. She stood there yelling at me for a good 5 minutes, claiming that I'm irresponsible and should not be allowed to work the kid rides. I called a manager over on the radio and he took a formal complaint from her, writing down what she was saying in his notebook. After the lady left he showed me his notebook and there was a drawing of a dragon eating her and her kid. Worked on a ride that had a height requirement, one of only a few in the park. This ride had flight simulators that were no joke. They could go completely vertical, and if the harness didn't hold you correctly, you could have a less than ideal riding experience. There was a woman and her child who tried to come and the child was too short. We explained this, give the kid a pass to jump to the front of the line when he's tall enough, and he's fine. Mother, however, was not. She's freaking out at us immediately. TBH, I wasn't really listening to what she said, but she wouldn't go away and was causing a huge disturbance. We call the manager on duty. She does the same thing to him. It's at this point that she says the one thing I remember. Are you telling me you care more about my child's safety than if he has a good time or not? My manager looks stunned, but responds quite calmly, yes, and, quite frankly, it concerns me that you don't. After that she left. Adults are far worse than children in amusement parks. I work those not quite rigged games where you pay $2 to try to win a stuffed animal or basketball. One family was so upset over losing $10 that they threatened to wait for me at my car and knife me after work. The whole family was running whack-a-mole. Some guy lost and punched the winner in the throat. Called security and he was kicked out, and they gave the winner some free stuff to apologize. IDK if anything else ever happened. Disneyland. Near the bank of Main Street in autumn. Old dude looking around at the leaves on the ground muttering to himself. He spots me and eagerly heads towards me. In my head, what is this nonsense? To him, good morning sir, is there an issue? Angrily, Walt would be spinning in his grave if he saw all this trash. I scanned the ground. There is no trash, only fallen leaves. The leaves. Yes, this place has become a disgrace. I apologized, thanked him and 2-finger pointed to City Hall. Oh lord, where do I start? I worked at Disney several years ago. One job I had was working with the various characters, and let me tell you what, people lost their goddamn minds over the characters. I was threatened, screamed at, followed, called names, spat at, all manner of rude things for either taking the character away or not letting people cut the line. But the one that always comes to mind is one mother. We did allow Make-A-Wish kids to cut the line and meet the characters first, for obvious reasons. One time when I did this, the mother got very angry and said I wish my kids had cancer so they could cut the line. I had no response except to pray the poor Make-A-Wish family hadn't heard her. I worked in the kiddie area of one of the SeaWorld parks. There was a little coaster there called the Shamu Express, which you had to be 38 inches tall to ride. This crusty man came up with his baby, had to be like 18 months old, in a diaper wanting to ride. Went off on me when I said she couldn't. Almost comically he picked her up and held her against the 38-inch sign, feet dangling in the air, trying to make it look like this baby was as tall as a 4-year-old. He started making fun of me, read my name tag, and made fun of my name as he stormed off. Worked Disneyland on New Year's Eve 1997. I was a busboy at Riverbell Terrace. The place was packed. Not a seat to be had. There were, however, some open seats at the Golden Horseshoe, which was maybe 100 yards away. We were told to direct people over there. This woman towing 3 kids and an elderly man comes up, holds out a $20, and says find me a seat. I'll let her know that we can't take tips, and even if I could, there were simply no seats to be had. However, there are seats at the Golden Horseshoe and I showed her where that was. She screams, oh come on. No seats. That's ridiculous. You want me to walk a mile just to sit down? I told her that I was sorry, but I would keep an eye out for seats and let her know when a table opened up. Fast forward 20 minutes. I find her and her party have basically squatted on the edge of one of the planters to eat. Whatever, I don't care. I see their trays next to them with empty plates. I ask if I can take them. Yeah, she says. Glad to see you can do something. Take it away, trash man. I smile and take them away. 5 minutes later, she's bitching to my manager that I took their trays without asking and that they were still eating. He refunded their money. I went to him after to please my case. He just laughed and said don't even sweat it. New Year's is hell. Just survive the night. It was cheaper to refund her than to have her waste more cast member time. Shake it off. It's not you who is the problem. Last night I ever worked there. I worked at Busch Gardens when I was 16. They had a little Renaissance fair game area, and I was a wench there. We had a game called Whack-A-Toad where a rubber toad the size of about 8 inches long and 3 inches wide was placed on a little catapult. Whack catapult with mallet. Try to get it in bucket 10 or 15 feet away. Get cheap stuffed animal if do. Well, the catapults were on swivels for aiming, and this game is right at the front beside the walkway, so Aaron Rubber Frog breaches the 3-foot stick fence and slaps middle-aged mom with fanny pack right upside her head. We used to throw these things at each other for fun. It did not hurt to get pelted by one. This woman goes nuclear, starts sobbing, then screams in horror 3 times while flailing her arms, then yells I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. Throws herself on the ground, sobbing in the middle of the walkway. Other passers-by barely looking down at her as they just walk to the side to get around her or step right on over her. Her husband eventually coaxes her to a bench. Her 2 boys just stand silently and unmoving against the fence, like they know the drill. The dad stood near her for 20 minutes with a ferret look on his face, not really looking at her or responding to her, while she sobbed and yelled about how he was a failure and the boys a disappointment, and she has to do everything. She planned the whole trip and isn't having any fun. Why can't any of them help her with anything? Then out of nowhere, she suddenly stops ranting, sniffles hard, just stands up, and marches up the path without a further word. The dad and sons just automatically followed after, about 5 paces behind her, not looking at each other or saying a word. Poor bastards. Former ride-op here, I've had many instances of adults having meltdowns over safety procedures being an inconvenience to their best day ever experience. I've been spat on, screamed at, threatened, you know the works. I have to say over the 3 years I worked at my coaster, the worst was during the first week of my 2nd year. So the coaster that I worked at had the tallest height requirement in the park, meaning we had a lot of families coming through with parent swap cards that let one parent wait through the line, while the other waits at the exit of the ride with the kid, who's not tall enough to ride. Parent 1 rides, trades spots with parent 2 who rides the next cycle when parent 1 gets back. So I had 2 mothers standing with their strollers in the exit, while dads are waiting in line. They point out their husbands, and I tell them I'll save 2 seats for them on the next train, and then ask a fellow op that's separating people into rows to hold 2 seats on the next train. So the train pulls in, and fellow op has forgotten to save 2 seats for these moms. The people sitting in the seats meant to be saved are buckled in, and I ask them if they can step back into the queue and wait for the next train, as these 2 moms were waiting in line in front of them at the exit. People on train start screaming at me that they've been waiting in the sun for 2 hours and they aren't getting off. Moms are standing next to me screaming that they've been waiting for longer and those are our seats, get out. I ask the people on the train again to please step back into the queue and the next train will be here in 5 minutes, and attempt to explain the parent swap process again when one of them stands up and full on slaps me in the face. She yells something about me being a 16-year-old on a power trip. I was 19 at the time. Says she doesn't want to ride the ride anyways and stalks off down the exit. Friend in tow. Moms get on the ride. We sent the cycle and my supervisor provided a bag of ice for my face. I worked at a children's theme park, the kind of place you would expect 5-year-olds to be having meltdowns. Instead, the adults were some of the worst humans I've ever encountered. One particular incident sticks out most in my mind. The ride was one where children drive little cars around a track, but the kid has to be over 6 years old. My friend was loading children in, asking them their age in the way we were trained. Frequently, you get a child who is younger than 6, and you have to tell them they can't go on the ride. The children, for the most part, are fine with this. They move on. Their parents, however, are livid. So the kids are coming in, and the loader tells one he's too young for the ride. The child's dad takes this as a personal insult and starts shouting at my friend, telling him this is absolutely unacceptable. He wants a refund. He wants to speak to a manager. What the fuck do you mean my kid can't go on this ride, sort of thing. The rest of us are out on the track hearing some blustering, wondering what's causing the holdup. The loader calls a manager, also security, because this guy's making threats now. Manager arrives, tells my butt to swap positions with one of us out on the track, so he's no longer in the line of fire. Manager seems to be dealing with it. Ride begins. Everything's fine. Then, out of nowhere, we see this dude climbing the fence surrounding the ride, shouting that he's going to beat up the guy who wouldn't let his child on the ride. He jumps down onto the track. We emergency stop the ride, leaving loads of 6-year-olds sitting in their cars just wanting to go for a drive. Security rush out, grab the guy, and pretty much have to drag him off the track. Guy who was loading the children has to sit in the back for a while to calm down. The guy who jumped on the track ends up getting a refund for his park tickets, and the manager gives him a couple of fast track passes for other rides for the inconvenience. Whenever I worked on our most popular roller coaster, every couple of ride cycles there would be a kid crying and saying they didn't want to ride. We were not allowed to send a coaster. If a kid was screaming about not wanting to ride, we would either have to talk to them and try to calm them down, or just let them out and have them wait in the exit for their parents. I've witnessed countless parents try to tell me that their kid was just being a baby and to just start the coaster down the tracks anyways. Not only is it policy, but it's just a shitty thing to do to a child. This coaster was a huge wooden coaster that was pretty rough and intense in some parts, and if a kid is super scared it might even traumatize them. I've had parents tell me to shut up, not to talk to their kids, that I can't let them out of the seat. Basically they just wanted to force their crying child to endure an intense coaster when they clearly didn't want to. It was really upsetting, honestly. I'm not an employee, but I seen this happen. I was at a local amusement park with my kids. There was a duck pond game where you pay $5, pick 2 ducks, and if either of the ducks has a star at the bottom wins a stuffed animal. Everyone else gets a little plastic piece of crap. My daughters were playing, and there was another little girl playing at the same time. The little girl picked 2 ducks and neither of them had a star. The girl's dad immediately starts saying the game was rigged and there wasn't one with a star, and he demanded the poor game operator give his daughter a stuffed animal. He tried to get me to agree because my daughters didn't win either. I said actually I've seen kids win before, so it's not rigged. Then he changed his tune and gave the girl running the game another 5 and picked up all the ducks and looked at them until he found the one with a star. He cheated at a game for small children. He got his stuffed animal and left. I was amazed how petty the guy was being, but the game operator said things like that happen all the time. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.